Welcome to my first sub-series, First Timers. First time being an expat, kind of. Ever since I was a kid, I've always wanted to travel. I remember I would get so upset if my parents wouldn't cross the town line with me at least once a day, whether it was just to go to the video store or grocery store or just something, because the town I grew up in was just so small and it always felt like there was so much more to see outside of that. And I know I totally just dated myself by referencing a video store, but they were the best. Anyway, I've just always felt this pull to see and experience things that were new. And I had even applied to go to university in the UK, and to be honest, don't really remember why I decided not to go. But the point being, I've just always wanted to try living abroad. I've been so lucky to have a career in music that has taken me to over 31 countries. And I always wondered if I ended up having a partner, A, how they would feel about me wanting to keep traveling on my own, and B, if they would be open to living in some far-flung place with me at some point, potentially away from everything they've ever known. Luckily, my husband, Matt, loves to travel too, and so we're finally doing it. We're giving Europe a trial run for the next 3 months to see how we like it. We've decided on the Netherlands specifically because there's a visa I qualify for as an American entrepreneur called the DAFT visa. You may already be familiar with this if you've listened to episode 6 of season 1 with my buddy Norman Vladimir, a fellow American entrepreneur who's been living in the Netherlands the last few years and who just got his permanent residency last week via this same visa. So congrats to Norman for setting the example for me. I hope this series isn't too navel-gazing, but if you're a curious, sometimes nosy person like I am, I thought some people might enjoy this sub-series chronicling our time in the Netherlands. We'll go through each of our pros and cons and talk through our experience and see if moving to Europe full-time at some point is something we want to try and do. Most importantly, I want to acknowledge what an absolute privilege it is to be able to have this experience and consider moving to another country, especially given what's been going on in Gaza the last few weeks and in so many places around the world. Going to sleep in a safe place every night, getting to live out a lifelong dream, knowing that there are people who are living out their actual worst nightmares at the same time has been a very strange, heartbreaking reality. And it is not lost on us that we are so lucky to be having this experience, and we are so grateful to be able to have this experience. If you're someone who is interested in moving abroad, or you're not really thinking about it, but you're just curious as to what the experience might be like, I really hope you enjoy this sub-series. Women's health is extremely important to me, and I think modern fertility is one of the most exciting, accessible new advancements to come out in recent years to help us really understand our bodies more. Whether you're ready to pop out a mini-me like yesterday, or the thought of being someone's parent after the night you had last night seems light years away, knowledge is power. Understanding how our bodies work to better be able to prepare for the future and take better care of ourselves right now is game-changing. Modern fertility doesn't just offer fertility testing. It also offers birth control, prenatal vitamins, ovulation and pregnancy tests, and just launched a sperm kit. Because fertility isn't just a woman's job, okay? So click the link in the show notes for $10 off your modern fertility hormone test and join the thousands of women who refuse to let fertility be a mystery. Now, back to the show. All right.
Here we are.
Cheers.
Cheers.
So Matt and I were talking this morning, and we were saying that it might be a good idea for us to do a little sub-series on...
You were saying.
I was saying, I'm the ideas woman, you know. I was saying that I thought it might be interesting to kind of dissect our experience in real time as we've been in the Netherlands. So we're about to hit the end of week 1, and thought it would be cool to just check in kind of publicly and with each other. And because I think there's things that we were talking about this morning that we're surprised by, that we like, that we aren't sure of, like Netherlands versus US. And for anyone else who might be interested in potentially doing a move abroad. We thought maybe you might be interested. So this may only appeal to a niche amount of people, unless anyone else is just nosy and curious, like I am nosy and curious about everyone else's life. But yeah, so we thought we would just kind of talk through our pros and cons list in front of you guys. So
you first.
Yeah. Well, let's see. So I guess this week for me, pros would be it feels super peaceful here. Like very, very peaceful. We're in a city outside of Amsterdam called Hilversum. And
it's like in between Amsterdam and Utrecht.
Yeah.
Kind of like equidistant between the two.
And like an easy train ride to either city. We're in a great location, like in the center, like in the town center. Everything is very walkable, really easy to run out and get something.
That's a big bonus.
Huge bonus for sure. And I've really missed walking a lot. Like I used to love walking when I lived in New York, and this has been really great. And it doesn't, and there's people everywhere, but it doesn't feel frenetic and really stressful, and people's energy doesn't feel like get out of my way, where I need to be is more important than where you need to be, which is kind of how it feels in so many places in the States, whether you're walking or driving, particularly driving, especially in Nashville. No one else cares about anyone else on the road, especially if you're not driving like a massive car.
I'd say like the biggest crowd that we've seen so far was when we went to Utrecht yesterday to visit a friend of mine, and that was, that felt very similar to New York energy-wise, like as far as the hustle and bustle.
Yeah.
Like, there was a lot of tourists, there was a lot of people. It was also a Saturday, so it seems here that people are really out doing things on the weekend, on Saturdays, and then on like Sunday mornings, as we saw today, it's like dead
totally
until
dead.
noon, and then things start to kind of come alive.
And then it dies again at 4.
Yeah.
so you have like a few hours in the day to get stuff done, and that's it on a Sunday.
And we both have been to Europe a bunch, and I think that I'm remembering this now happening in places like Germany and Austria, Switzerland, but it had been a minute, since kind of like been this immersed in it. So
apparently it's the Lord's Day here too. Just like in Tennessee,
right.
Bless. But yeah, so it just has felt very peaceful, very nice for the nervous system. What are some of your pros?
The pace, the energy, I'm definitely into. I love all the old stuff too, as I know you do. I mean,
yeah.
But just every time I come to Europe, I'm just always. I've been here, thankfully and fortunately, so many times as like touring through music, and every time it's just I feel like it's my first time in a way seeing some of these old buildings, and I love that. It kind of feels like hard to digest because things are just so old. You'll walk into a building, like we were walking past a building in Utrecht yesterday that it said like 1610 on it. And I'm just like, I mean, there's places in New England that I think are that old, but you have to really hunt those places down.
You do, for sure. I mean, I lived in a house when I was a kid that was built in 1742, and that's old for America, for sure.
Yeah.
But 1610, they're like, hold my drink,
Yeah.
America.
Yeah.
Also, to another pro, is just like the cost of things. Groceries, probably half of what I would pay in the U.S. And also, I have no idea how to speak or read Dutch, so this is a trial by fire for sure. The only 2 words I have learned are glutenvrij and sweeker, which
Dankjewel.
And dankjewel. So gluten-free, sugar, and thank you. So I need to hop on Duolingo stat, but even just looking at the number of ingredients in the food, way less ingredients in the food. And
it definitely feels cleaner.
Yeah.
But I think until we like really get under the hood and delve a little deeper and figure out if there is like a Monsanto in Europe, or like some sort of equivalent of that.
Yeah.
It does feel cleaner. I also think the portion sizes are so much better here. It's like I think a lot of times in the States, you go to a restaurant and you just feel forced into eating this enormous plate of food, especially at like a Mexican restaurant, for example. You know, you get like the tres enchiladas and it comes out on a plate. It's like a platter, like a Thanksgiving-sized platter.
Tres personas.
Now, I totally will devour that, but, you know, I definitely feel here you're just automatically, almost like instantly trained into eating like half the amount of food and being, you know, fine afterwards.
Yeah, for sure. I've definitely noticed I'm not really buying snacks. Eating like real food. Because also, again, I just can't read shit. So I'm just like, well, I don't know what's in this, so I don't want to get it if I don't know what's in it. So I've just been eating a lot more real food this week.
And this is the first trip that we've taken, whether solo or together, where we didn't really try to prep on the language side of things leading up
which
to.
I have guilt about, but
I do too, but also Dutch is an incredibly difficult language, and I studied German in high school, and that's an incredibly difficult language, and I feel like it's slightly related to Dutch. I know that the Dutch or the Germans probably would disagree, you know, because they are very different, but like at least from an English speaking point of view, like I hear words, I'm like, oh, that kind of sounds familiar, and but yeah, there's like other countries that we've been to where I feel like we did a much better job of prepping ahead of time. And
definitely, I just think life has been super crazy leading up to this temporary move. And I know for me, I probably could speak for you too, like just I haven't had the bandwidth to just like take on new information and sort of plan to like learn by immersion once we got here. Because, you know, I've never wanted to be somebody who goes to another country and just expects everyone to understand English. You know, this is truly the first time at 38 years old that I've ever gone to another country and just like not been prepared because I haven't had the time or bandwidth. But that will change. We'll learn. Any other pros?
Well, the public transportation system is next level, and that's, I think that could be said for most of Europe, and I think most people probably know that already. That's one of the first things you hear about Europe is just how connected it is. I brought my bike with me. I've already managed to take a couple rides, and every town, every city, from what I can tell, is all interconnected with greenways and bike paths, and it all just kind of flows into one to the next. And it's all designed around that. It seems like the infrastructure was built around the idea that everyone was going to be on a bike first and a car maybe second, or train, and et cetera, et cetera. So that's a huge bonus if you like to commute, you know, to work, for example, via bike, or you know, obviously this is a very walkable city. I know Amsterdam is walkable like New York is.
Yeah, that's another interesting point too, in that like the car situation. It's not that I don't like driving in the States, but I think I was saying earlier this week that it's interesting when you go grocery shopping and you don't have a car to just load a bunch of stuff into, and you can only take what you can carry or what you can put on your bike. You have to be really thoughtful about what you're getting. And again, it reminds me so much of living in New York. You're like, okay, I have like 3 or 4 tote bags. I can only carry so much on my body. I'm going to have to climb stairs. Like, how much can I buy? And I think it actually just makes you more intentional, which I appreciate. And it's been a nice reminder to kind of slow down and really think about what I need, what I want.
Yeah, I mean, that's like I think it's like a pro and a con for me, because it's like the pro side of it is that you have stores that are specialty stores, you know, so you go to like cheese shop and get your cheese, and then you go to the flower shop and get your flowers, and et cetera, et cetera. I do think on the con side,
Let's dive in.
The Whole Foods, the Trader Joe's, those kinds of places it's so convenient. You have all this really good food all in one place, you know? So if you don't have a lot of time through the course of the day, you miss places like that here. And even they're like full grocery stores that like, we've been into a couple, and it just doesn't seem like nearly the size of like a Kroger.
No. Well, it's just food.
Yeah.
Like, it's just food. And
like maybe
toilet paper and like household cleaning products, but you're not gonna like find like supplements in the same place you find food. Like there's other separate stores for that.
But again, if you appreciate just going to specialty shops, then Europe and the Netherlands definitely would be for you, because that seems to be the move here.
Cons. So that's kind of a con for you.
Yeah, it's kind of a con.
No one-stop shopping.
No, yeah. The weather is a big one. I'm definitely one of those people that suffers from a seasonal affect disorder. I get like super depressed and moody when it's overcast and raining. The weather changes fast here, as I'm realizing. It feels similar to like mountain weather in that way, and we're really close to the North Sea, so it makes sense because everything's just coming straight off of there into here. But you know, like the first day we were here, it was actually kind of warm. It was like maybe 70, and we got here in like mid-October, so it was like 70. But then the next 3 days, it was just like raining off and on, sometimes like downpours.
Not like frigid cold or anything, but just kind of like damp.
And like what you would expect from like Northern Europe in the fall. It's like low to mid 50s. So not a deal breaker, but for me it's more of the like constant rain, and then it can get windy at times too. But I was preparing myself for this. I knew that this was going to be, especially in the fall here. I've never been to the Netherlands in the summertime, and I don't know if it's like much different. But I knew that the fall I knew it was going to be wet and rainy and windy, and so that's a huge con for me.
You gotta get your vitamin D levels up. Counteract those gray days.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't mind rain so much. Like, I'm sad girl vibes, so like it's totally cool.
It does get to you after a while, though.
I mean, it might. It's only been a week. I'm enjoying having seasons. Like having just come from almost a year in LA, and although this was a very like weather heavy year for LA, weirdly, but I like seasons. I like it chilly. I don't mind it being overcast. That's never really bothered me. I lived in New York for 10 years, and a lot of the weather there is like that. Also, the weather there is very similar to here in that like you just never know what it's going to turn into. At one point you leave the house dressed one way, and then you're peeling off layers like a few hours later, and then you're freezing again later. So I think like I'm just used to that. And this again reminds me so much of that. I guess, Amsterdam, New Amsterdam, there's a reason.
There's a reason.
For me, I think the biggest con is community. We have such a great friend group in the States, and even though they're spread out all over the country, luckily we travel pretty regularly, so we get to see people on a frequent basis, and just not being close to our friends is going to be really interesting for the next 3 months. And if anything is a deal breaker for me, that I could see that being it. I'm very lucky, and I've never struggled to make new friends and like connect with people, and so I'm trying to trust the process, and that like knowing where we are right now is it's a much smaller city. It also feels a bit older, like it feels
really old or really young. There's like no in between here.
I mean, It's inspiring to see like 70-year-olds riding bikes around for public transportation, but it does feel very like just not our age group. So it hasn't felt like inspiring to kind of like go out and meet people. At the same time, I think we're still just acclimating to being here, and still a little bit jet lagged, and haven't had the energy to like be super social outside of being with each other. So it'll be interesting to be in Amsterdam for November through December. And we have one of our really good friends lives there, and just being able to meet people there and kind of see what the community is like there and how we connect with people. Yeah, friend group. And interestingly, like we were talking about this morning, and you as like an extroverted introvert were even saying that like you were struggling with it, which shocked me.
Yeah, I mean, because I've gotten more introverted the older I get, and I think I've gotten lazy with making plans to like hang with my friends, and thankfully our friends are like very I feel like
forgiving.
They just understand. They're just like, oh, Wigton's being him, he's just doing his thing. And like, but I think and this is, I don't know any other way to word it, but it's like knowing that they're accessible, like they're around you, that like you could make plans if you wanted to.
Which I said, though, I was like, that's kind of bullshit, because we can't just stay somewhere because you like the idea of being able to call someone if you're not going to call them.
I think it's you
actually have to call them.
No. I think it's like it's a comfort thing. It's almost more just the thought of knowing that they're all around you.
Yeah, no, I get that.
It's comforting, right? And I didn't realize that it was comforting until we got here. And we've only been here like 5 or 6 days, but I think it's the thought, knowing that we have another like 11 weeks here, and that's a long time. And so it was like already, I mean, yeah, it's affecting me more than I think I gave it credit for, which I was like kind of surprised by, because like I've become more introverted. Yeah, that was definitely like a big number 2 on my list, con already.
Yeah.
The number 3, which is also a big one, is food, and specifically like restaurant life. We both eat out a lot, especially on the weekends. It's just kind of like a way that we can kind of blow off some steam and like get out of the house and try to experience, new cuisines, or like a lot of times we'll make new friends that way. Sometimes we'll meet people, like whether it's the owner of the restaurant or bartender or whatever. So it's a great way to kind of get out and something, and we, like I said earlier, we both have been to Europe a lot. And this is something that I remember, is that like a lot of the places you go, you can get the specialty foods very easily. So like one of my favorite meals ever I had in Portugal years ago, and it was just like a simple plate of the best sardines I've ever had in my life. And when you think of Portugal, you think of sardines. This is like what they do. This is, one of their biggest industries. And so that makes sense. But as we're walking around, we've already dined out a few times, and I feel like I've taken the American food scene, specifically like the farm to table, the like hipster coffee shops,
or the like experimental, really fun.
Yeah, like I've taken a lot of that for granted, just because we have so much access to it all over the States.
Yeah,
it's not until you're traveling to some tiny little town in the middle of nowhere, America, that you are like, oh yeah, there's nothing here. It's a food desert.
But I think particularly like Nashville and LA, and New York. Like New York, like having been there for so long, like those are such great food cities. There's so much exciting food happening there.
And Nashville has blown up in the last 10 years plus. They've just had so many amazing chefs, all these James Beard winners, like coming into town and opening up these restaurants.
And even just people who, aren't necessarily in that kind of scene, but just great cooks opening places up. Yeah, it's just a really diverse food scene, and it's really exciting. It's really fun to participate in.
Here you will pass by a restaurant and be looking at the menu. And this is just here in Hilversum, Netherlands. So again, Amsterdam, I'm sure, is going to be way more diverse. Utrecht already felt more diverse.
Yeah.
But still, you will see these menus that have just this.
It's like a smattering of random shit. Like you're just like, okay, there's like a grilled cheese, but then there's like a kebab, and then there's like a curry, but then there's sushi, and you're like, what do you do? Yeah. What's your vibe? Like, what's happening?
Which then made me just realize how much I appreciate like an experience and like a curated vibe, whether it be like not just the food, but also like the decor and like the whole shebang, So that I feel is going to be challenging, and in particular the coffee. I've always never vibed with European coffee. They do all the espresso stuff, and even so, I find it to be more like monodynamic in flavor. A lot of these baristas are pulling from these machines that are all really similar, and occasionally you'll walk into a shop like Factory Girl in Amsterdam is a good example. Like they really know what they're doing. Like their coffee is amazing, and
there's a place across the street from us that we found that has really great pour over coffee too. And
then like a full, like one of those, I forget the name of the Italian espresso machines, but those like fancy like $30,000 ones. It's, you're in the right place when you walk into a shop, that has something like that. But generally, it's just the coffee is pretty monodynamic here, and I miss the American like hipster.
Matt's a coffee snob, so he's crema all day long for any Nashvilleians listening. Yeah, I agree. Like the food, I'm hopeful for the food in Amsterdam. We had great meals when we were in Amsterdam last year. But we were only there for like 2 or 3 days. And then I'd been there a few other times on tour. But again, you're like kind of flying through. You're not really getting a chance to like dig in and look at a city from a place of really living there. You're just like, you're only there for a short time. And so you're kind of just like cramming a bunch of stuff in. So yeah, I'm excited to see what that scene is like. And I think going back to pros, I think something that we really realize is like we don't want to live in a small town. This place is very peaceful, but I don't think there's enough happening. I don't think it's like necessarily diverse enough or like exciting enough. I feel much more comfortable like in an environment that just feels really colorful and exciting and busy, and I love being around people. So I know for me that's like it almost feels a little too quiet, but I think that was a good realization for us to be like, oh, okay, we don't actually really want to live in like a small town. That being said, it does seem like there are really small town like villages that are just outside of major cities. Like we had coffee with some friends yesterday in Utrecht, and they live in a village that's only 5 kilometers from Utrecht, and they rode their bike in. So, that's like, 3 miles and change? That's so close. So I could see maybe something like that if we do end up moving over here and we want some like peace and quiet, but it's like still so close that it's really easy to come in. And you're very close to like a vibrant, exciting scene versus kind of living in a more mid-sized city or town that doesn't, like, the energy is just a little stagnant. Yeah, anything else you want to add? I think one other like con for any dog owners, like there hasn't been a ton of like green space in the town that we're in, and so I don't know about your dog, but our dog gets really messed up if he can't like poop on grass. So
that coupled with the stairs issue, that's a major con. The
stairs are insane.
I mean, I knew about Dutch stairs. I remember seeing pictures, and like when we were in Amsterdam last year, I was like, wow, this is the real deal.
I mean, we're talking more than 45 degrees. I'm not even exaggerating when telling you it's almost like a ladder to get into the building we're staying at. Very narrow,
a lot of times like windy, and it's kind of like New York in that it's a crapshoot whether the building has an elevator or not, but we've been having difficulties getting our dog Tux up these stairs, and this apartment has 2 flights of stairs, one up to the first floor where the living room and kitchen is, and then there's another flight up to the bedroom, and that's even more precarious.
Yeah, because they're also they're like very narrow, and they're really slippery wood, and so we've been slipping on them. He slips on them. Matt's been having to carry him up the stairs, and then like I'll bring him down, or one of us will bring him down and put his harness on. Yeah. And we'll have to hold the handle on his harness and hold the staircase railing to like kind of brace each other as we're going down. So I think if we were to move here, ground floor or a building with an elevator, if you have a dog, like a large dog, I think it's going to be pretty important. For sure. Because this is definitely like it's not a sustainable thing.
Or if you're like having to move equipment, like for example,
like if we were still touring and like moving the kind of like equipment around we were moving when we were touring, or if you have like a baby and a stroller. I mean, people seem to do it all the time. Maybe we're just weaklings. I don't know.
It's definitely precarious.
Yeah, it does seem precarious. Like if you are carrying something precious and going up and down very narrow, steep stairs. Other than that, the apartment's been great. And it's a nice little balcony. And again, location's been awesome. But yeah, that's week 1. So I don't know if we're going to do this weekly or bi-weekly, but I think it's helpful for us to talk through all of the pros and cons. If you have moved abroad or you're thinking about moving abroad, we'd love to hear from you. So hit me up on Instagram at Dani Official. You can hit Matt up at Wigtronic on Instagram as well. Or you can also message me over on TikTok at FTFEpod. And I would love to just hear what your experience has been like moving abroad, or like what your thoughts are on moving abroad. And we'll keep the discussion fiery in the DMs. Fiery in terms of excitement, but kind, hopefully, because Americans tend to get very upset when you tell them that you don't think America is necessarily the best place in the world. No comment from Matt.
No comment. No comment.
I love America. Let it be known I love America, but we're just trying some other stuff out,
Testing the waters.
Anyway, all right. Thanks for hanging out with us, guys, and we will see you in the next episode.